Hey everyone, welcome back to Bodhi Tree Buddhism. Got another class here for you today. I'm trying to think even what class number we're up to. I think we're up to class number 22. And we're actually at an important phase in the whole book, in the whole of The Way to Buddhahood by Venerable Master Inchun, because last week we wrapped up the Dharma common to the 5 vehicles, and now we are entering on the Dharma common to the 3 vehicles. So just a little reminder about what all these vehicles mean. Actually, to be honest, I'm not a huge fan of this term vehicle to translate the Sanskrit word yana and the Chinese word sheng. What they basically mean is they're basically like a different kind of path, a different kind of method, depending on a different kind of motivation. So just let's do a little really brief review of all these so-called vehicles before we jump on into the text itself. So in Master Inchun's sort of analysis of all the teachings, and this is not really his own analysis, this is something that's totally supported from Indian Buddhism and goes all the way through all the Chinese traditions and many traditions. Normally we talk about the 3 vehicles. Anyway, so as I said, people have different motivations. So the first basic motivation is what we might call happiness in this life and happiness in future lives. So it's basic acceptance of the idea of cyclic existence. But just basically as a human being, I'm just going to be a human, maybe next life be a human, be a happy human, have the goods I need to be happy, and the things, goods here not like material goods, just like all the things. So that then is my motivation. That's what I'm looking for, and that becomes the so-called human vehicle. So what vehicle means here is like a path or a method or a practice. So there are certain practices that I should then do and engage in that will bring about the result of me being a happy human in this life and in future lives. The second motivation is very similar, but just sort of raised up a notch. The idea that I want to be happy in this life and future lives, but not just in the human world. I also want to experience that happiness in the divine realms and the divine worlds, the heavens. And so this becomes the second so-called vehicle. Well, it actually doesn't become. In order to achieve this goal, then we have a particular path, particular practices, and these particular paths and practices are then the heavenly vehicle or the divine vehicle. Now, these first 2, of course, don't have the goal of liberation. And now I know as soon as you say that in a lot of circles, I think particularly more in Western Buddhist circles, some people go, oh, if you're not seeking liberation, you're not practicing Buddhism at all. Yeah, sorry, Buddhist teachings don't quite support that idea. There's lots of teachings, old and new, of Buddhists not looking to directly be liberated, but just seeking for these goals. So there's nothing wrong with it. And not just there's nothing wrong with it if that's your goal, but another really important point is don't use our own goals for our own practices to sort of measure up and size up other practitioners. That's just being condescending, basically, like, oh, I want to be a Buddha and you're just seeking happiness in the divine world. Oh, just don't do that. Like, anyone who does the slightest amount of good and anyone who has any inspiration to do a good deed, like, support that and rejoice in that and take it from there. Look on the positive side, not on the negative side. So there are some practitioners who are seeking liberation, and that's what we're going to get into starting today. So those first 2, the human paths and the divine paths, are the first 2 of the 5. And then the paths that seek liberation are basically third path. Like, I just want to get out of the samsaric mess. Liberate me from suffering. Okay, and that's what we're going to talk about today, the so-called Śrāvakas, the disciples. There are also the Pratchika Buddhas, the solitary Buddhas, who seek liberation, but they do so at a time when there is no Dharma teachings or Buddhist teachings in the world. And then last but not least, certainly not least, is the path of the Bodhisattvas, so the Mahayana, the great vehicle, the path that seeks liberation, not just for oneself, but also for other living beings. So together we've got, I want to be a happy human in this life and future lives, or I want to be a happy God in this life and future lives. I want to be liberated from psychic existence. I also want to be liberated from psychic existence, but I'm going to do it at some other point in vast history that doesn't have Buddhist teachings. So I kind of work it out for myself. And I'm going to not only be able to liberate myself, I want to have all the skills to be able to liberate others and have the compassion to also apply myself to that ends. Bam, 5 vehicles. So let's get into the text and see what we have from here. There we go. Okay, so it's chapter 4, section 4, the Dharma common to the 3 vehicles. Now there's a little bit in the text here, it talks about motivation and capacity, and that's kind of what I've just been covering, talking about the different vehicles or the different paths. Now let's then jump into what is here, 修学动机, resolving to renounce. So one of the key things here with all these 3 vehicles is because they have the goal to be liberated from psychic existence. That's what we call renunciation. Okay, so that's what we use by this term renunciation. So let's have a look at the text here. Verse number 59. 一切行无常，说诸受皆苦，缘此生厌离，相于解脱道. All constructions are impermanent. It is taught that all sensations are dissatisfactory. Due to this, one generates disgust and renunciation and turns toward the path of liberation, or the path to liberation. So this is pretty straightforward. And so the first 2 are kind of a couple of points that bring about this sense of, I want to be liberated from psychic existence. All constructions, all conditioned phenomena, if you will, are impermanent, right? Sarva sankhara anitya. So this term here, constructions, samskara, it refers to basically all conditioned phenomena. It's an interesting term in that it's also the same term for the 4th aggregate, right? If you know the 5 aggregates, you've got like material form, you've got sensations, you've got perceptions, then you've got samskara, and then you've got cognitions, or usually translated in English as consciousness. So this 4th one here, in this sense, samskara as one of the aggregates mainly refers to all these other like mental events that are going on. A lot of them are sort of like drivers and volitions. These are some other good translations. I know one person who translates this as complexes, like psychological complexes. I think that's also fairly accurate. And they're driving forces. The very term samskara itself, the kar, from kr, is a real action verb. So I like to sometimes translate them as like emotions, things that make us move, and other things that make us do things, driving forces that are psychological. However, here, in this different context of saying all samskaras are impermanent, is actually just referring to all conditioned phenomena. And it's basically synonymous with the term samskrita. Now, samskrita is just the word samskara in a passive past participle, a bit of Sanskrit for you. It's like past, so like constructed things, whereas samskaras are constructions. It's really no difference in this context, okay? So all constructions, all conditioned things are impermanent. My physical body, or my thoughts, my clothing, my computer, this glass, planet Earth, the sun, the universe, micro level, macro level, meso level, all impermanent. Wow, take that in, chew on that for a while. Second point, right, 主受皆苦. Now usually this is just also expressed as 主行皆苦, which it's just a parallel of that first sentence. All constructions are impermanent and all constructions are also dissatisfactory. Here though, he's phrased it as all sensations because this term here, cool, so dissatisfaction, dukkha, right? We know this term, that's for sure. Dukkha, usually translated as suffering, maybe pain. I'm pretty sure, I teach this so often. Usually in the context of talking about like all conditioned phenomena being dukkha, it's probably better to translate it as dissatisfactory than rather painful, because the Buddha did teach that there are pleasant sensations. You have a lovely cup of coffee, you eat an ice cream. It's pleasant. I mean, for most people, it's pleasant. And to say it's painful, well, it's not painful. But even that pleasant thing is conditioned, it's impermanent, it's not going to last. It is still dissatisfactory. It doesn't bring about lasting, sort of eternal satisfaction. And that's the main point here. And so this is this idea of something being dissatisfaction, being pleasant or being painful, is usually something that qualifies what we call sensations. So the second of the 5 aggregates, right? So this is just kind of a phrasing thing, but these are basic principles. All conditioned phenomena are impermanent, and because they are impermanent, they are dissatisfactory. You cannot rely on any conditioned phenomena to bring you some kind of stable, ongoing happiness or satisfaction. Line 3, 原是生厌离. So due to this, so based on this, based on these 2 principles and these 2 contemplations, one generates or brings about this particular sort of emotional reaction. Now, the term here is yin li, probably some Veda, Pali and Sanskrit. I've translated it as 2 words, disgust and renunciation. It's probably really just 1 word, but it's hard to sort of say, you know, this book we're reading isn't a translation from Pali or Sanskrit. So we can't say exactly, is it 2 words in English, is it 1 word? But by using 2 words, I think I can flesh out a bigger picture. Disgust and renunciation. So it means that, like, when we see this nature of things, we really kind of like, enough of it, and I don't want it and I don't need it anymore. So even if you say, well, that chocolate ice cream was quite delicious, but if I feed you chocolate ice cream all day, every day, you are going to generate disgust and renunciation. You'll be in this point of like, I never want to see chocolate ice cream ever again. It's like, you know, it's not pleasant. It has no attracting value to it. And this is another good example, because normally we'd say the chocolate ice cream is pleasant. The pleasantness, the pleasantness is an actually inherent quality of the ice cream. It's in relation between ourselves, our own psychological makeup, and the ice cream. And it's produced as a result of these. It's not a quality. And that's why, with certain states of mind and certain contemplations like these ones here, we can generate disgust and renunciation. You just have enough of things. You know, and sometimes even like, sometimes you hear of like these mega celebrities and who live a life of party, party, party. And even they, like enough of partying. I must, you know, I don't know what they do. Probably go on like expensive, cool retreats up in the mountains or something fun like that. But it's the same principle, like have enough and want to turn away from it. So they generate disgust and renunciation, and they turn toward the path of liberation. They see that basically there's no way out except through this path. Samsara isn't going to magically become good in and of itself, even when the pleasant things, let alone the painful things, are dissatisfactory. So this basic thought here, this basic idea here, is the crux of resolving to renounce, having that like intention to seek the path to liberation, and makes the big distinction between the paths leading to happiness in this and future lives as a human or as a deity. Because that's still like, well, you know, maybe next life I can be a little bit more handsome and rich, have some more good stuff. Yeah, that's what I want. Still, you know, you're kind of sort of looking forward to something, and usually some kind of pleasant thing. You know, maybe in this lifetime I can be the president, and oh, the power. Yeah, and you're thinking about it, something that you want. And in this phase, you're like, even that power, like, who wants it? Who wants the stress of being president of the world, even if you get all the power that goes with it? Enough, get me out of here. Right, that's that turning point. Now, some people would argue that some people need to actually like go through having all the good stuff as humans before they can turn to renunciation. This is kind of an interesting idea. Let's maybe talk a little bit about that. It's kind of reminds me a bit of like what is it, like Maslow's like hierarchy of needs, and the idea that you must like satisfy these base levels before you can build on the higher levels. I think there's kind of something in that. You know, if you are starving and you're freezing to death, yeah, well, you need food and you need like warm shelter before you can think about even like social things or whatever, let alone fulfilling your potential as a sentient human being. Yeah, okay. But I don't think you need to like max out the lower levels before you can go and hit the higher levels. And you certainly do also sometimes see people that are like, they've got only the bare minimum of the essentials in life, but they have the maturity to look toward higher spiritual goals. right? So I don't think you need to kind of like fulfill completely the lower levels before the higher levels. So likewise, when it comes down to this one, you know, do you need to become the president or the prime minister or whatever of your country before you can realize as politics as a whole just so bad and you need to, you know, be freed from it? Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, that's a bit like sort of saying like, you know, you need to be horribly addicted to crack cocaine before you would think crack cocaine is not a good idea. And I don't think so. I can just look at some other information about it. Like, I don't want to go there. Now this idea is also, it's a bit like the four horses. There's a story about it's like this metaphor, this analogy. Some people just like hear of death and they're immediately like, wow, I'm gonna die. Like, what am I doing with my life? And they think towards sort of higher goals. Some people are like, and go through various stages, like they don't just hear about death, or like someone dies in their village or somebody then dies in their family in the last period. It's like when they themselves are die, what am I doing with my life? Unfortunately, most people are like the last one, right? And the Buddha gives the analogy of like four horses. The smartest horse sees the shadow of the whip, so it's like racing along. Now this analogy does not promote the whipping of horses, okay? Don't misconstrue the analogy. It says they see the shadow of the whip, so the rider like just holds up the whip. They don't even need to strike the horse, and the horse is like, whoa, you're gonna hit me, you know, speeds up. And then the other one like needs to like little tap, and then like whack, and then the last horse like basically is being beaten viciously by the rider before it's like, oh, you want me to pick up speed? So coming back to this idea, you know, do we need to go through and experience all the pleasures of the world before we renounce them? I don't think so. I don't think so. We have, you know, we have intelligence and we have wisdom, and you can often learn a lot by looking at other people, you know. Unfortunately, people like look at like celebrities or the super rich, and they think like, oh, I want to live like that, because they see like the glamorous side. That's the side that gets portrayed, obviously. But you know, apparently a lot of, you know, like the super wealthy and super powerful like celebrities, they live their lives of fear, of, you know, being hounded by the press, of having their children being kidnapped, and you know, all sorts of kind of crazy stuff. Crazy in the sense of like it would be kind of crazy to have to like live in fear of these things. We don't need to necessarily go through that. We can think about these things and reflect on these things at whatever stage and whatever state that we happen to be in at the present. Okay, that's a little bit of a distraction. Let's go back. So that is your resolution to renounce. Then it talks a little bit about practitioners of the Dharma common to the three vehicles. So remember, the renunciation isn't just it's for all of these three vehicles. So very simple verse here: 随机离散胜，正化与声闻. According to capacities, three vehicles are established. So again, even those who have renunciation, there are three different capacities, right? And therefore there are three different paths that are specifically set up for them. And the first section that we're going to deal with here is basically that of the Śrāvakas, the Hera disciples. The Śrāvakas, the Hera disciples, are the direct subject of this teaching. And when we get into the next section, I kind of remember there's like probably one verse or something for the Pratyeka Buddhas, and then there's a huge big chunk of most of the text. How far are we even through this? We're not even halfway. See this? I don't know if you can see that on the side on the screen. We're like about halfway through the text, and then we've got a big chunk at the end, which is of course the great vehicle. Let's just talk a little bit about this word Śrāvaka here. So it comes from shru, which is to like hear in Sanskrit, and it's literally hearer, someone who hears. So I've been doing a fair bit of Sanskrit lately. I won't give you a Sanskrit breakdown of the term. The Ka at the end makes it an adjective, so it's describing like a person, rather than, it's not hearing, it's the hearers. But even though it's called hearers, we often translate this as the disciples. In Chinese, it's called shengwen. It's literally sound hearers. You can see that here at the end. The last two characters in the Chinese, shengwen, sound, sheng. Not just sound, sometimes also sound, but kind of specifically a voice, like a human sound, or when they hear them. And this refers to the idea that the Buddha's disciples hear the Dharma from the Buddha. They're hearing the Buddha's voice. So then this becomes like a natural term in ancient India to refer to a disciple. So that's who we're specifically talking about. And again, I just want to emphasize, if you come from like a Mahayana tradition background, then there's a good chance that you would have heard probably a lot of what we would really call like propaganda against the disciples. Now, I'm going to say from a Mahayana point of view, there are legitimate concerns about practicing this path. The basic idea is if you practice it very fully, very quickly, you might get liberated. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing, but once you're liberated, then you're out of samsara and you won't be able to be a bodhisattva. Now, this is debated specifically really mainly by only one text, which is the Lotus Sutra, and that's dominated a lot of East Asian thought, this idea that you just become like an arahant, a liberated Śrāvaka disciple, and then you turn back into the path and you continue on then on the bodhisattva path towards full awakening. But most other, I mean like 99% of other Mahayana texts don't have it like that. It really is, if you are liberated as an arahant, as a Śrāvaka, then you're liberated. And that's fine, that's good for you, but it does mean the end of your time, and you can't become a bodhisattva, can't become a Buddha after that. So there are some kind of like legit concerns from that vehicle, but also at the same time, you got to say, if you can't fulfill the basic requirements of being a disciple, you won't be able to be a bodhisattva, because the foundations of this vehicle are also the same foundations of the Mahayana. So please do keep that in mind. Now, there's a little section here. How are we doing for time? Yeah, not too bad. I think we'll start on this one, but we might probably come back to it next week. So let's just go through the section here, the diversity of the hearers. So it talks about, there's a range of different types of hearer disciples. 解脱道原理，苦乐之二边，顺摄乐行者，在家修法行；顺摄苦行者，出家做沙门。The path of liberation avoids the two extremes of mortification and sensual indulgence. To conform to and accommodate those who cultivate pleasure, householders cultivate their Dharma practice. To conform to and accommodate those who cultivate asceticism, renouncers of the household life become Shramas. Okay, so a couple of really important concepts here. The first one is 解脱道原理，苦乐之二边. The path of liberation avoids the two extremes of mortification and sensual indulgence. Now, this comes from, this is like such a core story of the Buddha's own path, right? We know how the story goes, but it's worth saying it again. It's still such an important story. The Buddha, in his life as the prince in the palace, lives a life of luxury and a life of sensory luxury and pleasure. He's got the wealth, he's got the power, and not just that. We know, we're told in the story. And remember, this isn't about whether the story is true. This is the analogy. And if I can quote John McCrae's rules for Chan studies, if it's not true, it actually makes it even more important for Buddhists. The fact that they tell the story like this just shows how much they want to emphasize that the life of pleasure is an extreme. And so in that story, we're told like he lives in the palace, and he's got 3 different palaces, one for each of the seasons, the dry season, the hot season, and the rainy season. And in the rainy season, he just lives in the upper floors of the palace. He doesn't even need to go outside. Everything's brought to him. He has the food, he has music. Because these stories were typically told by the usual men, heterosexual men that were the main power holders in ancient India. He has all these dancers, this beautiful woman. Of course, he's got his wife. if you really go in and have a look at the story, the actual textual sources for the Buddha's life, he doesn't just have one wife, he's got multiple wives of various forms, shall we say. Pleasure, 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 party, party, party. Kind of not in a bad way. He's not some like crazy, crack, snorting rock star, but it is a life of pleasure. And you know, in the end there, it's kind of like, we're told the description was like, after this party, he sort of wakes up and sees like all his party buddies all like conked out and looking probably hungover and smelly and horrible post-party mess. And he's like, oh no, you know, renunciation, disgust. Like, it's just gross. I don't want any more of this. But then when he becomes a renunciant, he first tries the path of like asceticism, like self-mortification. So in the China, and you know, this is literally in ancient India, it is self-mortification. This idea that when you suffer pain, when you commit acts of karma, or in the Jaina tradition, I mean, they use a different word. They don't use the same word that the Buddhists use of karma. But when you commit various acts, it brings about pain. That's the result. Pain. You burn off your past bad karma, shall we say. So this was one of these key ideas, and the Jaina religion still has a kind of a pretty similar idea to this even today. And actually sometimes this idea kind of seeps into Buddhism, but we can maybe talk about that later. So they literally do things which create pain and weaken the body. And another idea is sort of weakening the power of the body, you liberate the soul. So, you know, not wearing any clothes, abandoning all these material forms, practically starvation, just keeping yourself barely alive. But other things like, you know, standing on one leg for hours, if not days or weeks, holding up one arm until like it basically literally withers, the blood flow stops and your arm literally withers and dies on your body. Sleeping on beds of nails. I mean, apparently these people actually did do all these things, and some people still do these today in India. That is self-mortification, literally kind of killing yourself. And the Jainas, the highest form of practice, is basically a form of ritual suicide by slowly starving yourself to death. And he found that didn't work either. And that's the key part. So these are the two things that didn't work. The luxurious life in the palace doesn't lead to ultimate happiness, and also self-mortification as an ascetic, deliberately trying to like tame down the body and cause it pain, also does not lead to liberation. These are the two extremes. Now in Chinese, what we have here is ku le, which is literally like pain and happiness. And we're often told in Buddhism, there's two extremes. The first extreme is pain, and the second extreme is like happiness, or sorry, happiness and pain. Now this is really, really easy to misunderstand here. And what I think the biggest misunderstanding is that people then think, if I experience pain, I've got to avoid it because as a good Buddhist, that's an extreme. And if I experience pleasure or happiness, I should also avoid that too. But it's not about experiencing pleasure or experiencing pain. You're going to experience pleasure and pain. Even the Buddha experiences pleasure and pain. The Buddha goes into like deep dhyana meditation. He experiences bliss throughout his whole body and mind. Incredibly amazing bliss. Is he craving happiness? Is he craving pleasure? Think about that. And also, like when the Buddha is old, you know, even before he was old, he had back pain. He'd sometimes get sick. He had something like dysentery or something just before he died. I mean, that would have been physically painful. Is that wrong? So the point isn't experiencing pleasure or pain is bad. It is deliberately chasing after these. It's the seeking of these. Craving toward pleasure, which is usually the kind of the hedonistic lifestyle. That's the problem. It's the craving towards it. It's not the pleasure itself. And likewise, for the ascetics, they literally are seeking pain. They're trying to inflict pain on it. That is also a problem. It's the action towards it, which is the karma, that driving force. That's the force that keeps samsara going. Okay, so I just want to be really clear about this, because I find people often get very confused about this, about the so-called two extremes. the extremes are not pleasure and pain. The extremes are seeking, chasing after pleasure, and seeking, chasing after pain. Now, already half an hour into our class here today, and we've still got a couple more bits. Maybe this is a good time to wrap up. We've still got the rest of this, verse number 61. Just want to note, in the Chinese, it also puts like the practice of happiness and the practice of pain, and it looks like on one side they're saying you want to avoid the extremes of pleasure and pain, and here it says in order to incorporate those who practice pleasure and those who practice pain, and then it talks about lay practitioners and monastic practitioners, but it's not. But you can see my translation here, it's cultivating pleasure and cultivating asceticism. So we're gonna it's going to take a bit of time, so I think it's best if we just hang on that for now, wrap it up with the two extremes for today, and next week we're going to continue on from verse number 61, just hope I remember where we got up to, and take it from there. But for now, just a little recap. The core thing today is we have moved into the Dharma common to the three vehicles, the three paths toward various forms of liberation. Our foundation is the path of the Śrāvakas, the disciples, but this is also the same foundation for practical Buddhas, and also all you keen Mahayana Bodhisattvas out there. Same foundation, okay? And that means we've turned away then from the two vehicles, the two paths that lead to happiness in this and future lives. And the main difference there is seeing that all conditioned phenomena are impermanent, all conditioned phenomena are dissatisfactory, and even wanting to be reborn as a god, the president, the most powerful human being that you could possibly be, is not gonna save you. It's not gonna save you from impermanence, old age, disease, and death. Play dramatic music here, dun dun dun. It's not going to save you, and that thought and that contemplation is what turns us towards renunciation. So that's a good place to wrap it up. Thank you for joining us today. We'll be back again next week to talk more about this path. Take care, everyone. I'll see you again soon.